soon as you're ready for us, we can get started. Is that me?
That's feedback, not my hearing.
I didn't hear anything.
Okay,
Yeah, it's feedback.
okay, thank you.
All right. So this is just a nice starter slide. We can start on the next one. All right, so over the last few years, we've been taking into account surveys from our staff, surveys from our students, and surveys from our community to see what we needed to do to make a really strong culture at Faribault Middle School. And from that, we kind of have started building from the ground up. And I'd like to compare what we've done to building a house. Click. And so when you're building a house, and this is coming from someone who has zero construction experience, but I know you need a very strong foundation. And we have in ours, click, next. Our foundation is restorative practices. And what restorative practices is, and we've really taken the time, probably to the annoyance of some, but I'm one of those people that moves slow to go fast. We're really taking the time to figure out what restorative practices are because I think it's very easy to misinterpret and then totally blow it up if you're not doing it correctly. So we've gone very slow with our staff, starting simply just by defining it. What is it? What does it mean? And restorative practices in general both builds community, and so we're doing that by shifting from teachers caring about students to building a caring environment. And I said to my staff at the beginning of the year, there is not a single person in here who doesn't care about students, but care only goes one way. I can care about you. But what we're doing is we're intentionally creating a caring community. And when that happens, I care about you, you care about me, and we care about each other. And that's what the very proactive side of restorative practices are. The other side of restorative practices that we hear more often about is its role in repairing harm when it does occur. And Mr. Molitor is really great about that, and he's going to talk about it later, and that's through restorative chats, learning from mistakes, making amends, and repairing those relationships so that students, when they do make a mistake, can come back into the classroom and once again be part of the classroom. And so that's at the very foundation of what we started doing. And from that, we built our PBIS framework. Click. Next slide, click. I'm like the 1980s, click.
So just to share a moment with you what PBIS or Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. We believe it's making a very meaningful impact on the culture at Faribault Middle School. PBIS it's a proactive school-wide framework that promotes positive behavior, enhances student engagement, and it emphasizes a supportive learning environment. So we believe that by setting a very clear expectations for our students and reinforcing those positive behaviors, that we're creating a school culture where our students feel valued, where they feel supported, and where they're motivated to succeed. So at Faribault Middle School, like our elementaries, we use the SOAR model. So every morning, part of our announcements, our students or staff will often read our pledge, which is we are safe, we are on task, we are accountable, and we are respectful, so that we can support the learning of others, encourage one another, and give our best effort. So that's a little bit of what our SOAR model is. And so these are the core expectations that we have of our students. And this is the approach that we take every day. So we have staff members that are actively reinforcing these behaviors, recognizing students for making positive choices throughout their day, and there's incentives, and there's acknowledgement, and there's structured interventions, as Dr. Fox was talking about. And created a culture at the Faribault Middle School where our students are beginning to really thrive. And we have a couple students here that will talk much more about that, but our click?
Who's next? Not click
Oh,
yet.
not yet, I'm sorry.
No, totally okay. To add on to what Dr. Fox and Mr. Armbruster are saying, a few things here. One, again, that foundational piece of building positive relationships. That's our really big focus at Faribault Middle School, is we want to make sure that everybody feels included and part of our system and our culture within the building. Some proactive things that we do that haven't been mentioned is we really focus on character building lessons. So throughout the school year, all of our students receive character building lessons, teaching our kids what is respect, what is safety, what is accountability, really hitting these topics home so that they have an understanding of what they are and how they can demonstrate them within our building. We utilize consequences that focus on student growth. We really look at things like restorative conversations, restoring and repairing relationships within the building. We utilize things like accountability projects that, again, have students analyzing and looking at their behavior and how they can grow from it and learn from it. And we have created something called our Falcons Forward program, which we've had a lot of success with. To talk about some of those data pieces that we've seen a lot of success at Faribault Middle School is 93% of our students who were placed in our Falcons Forward program did not have to repeat it, so they've only had to go through it once, and then they showed that they learned from those lessons. And through the incorporation of our PBIS and restorative practices, we've reduced our behaviors by 40% this year. So we've been seeing a lot of growth with our PBIS and restorative practice programs.
So then ultimately, a house isn't complete without the bricks and mortar, and that is our staff and our students. And we brought our students here to talk about their experience. This is Bella Salt and Salman Gavani, and they are part of our PBIS SOAR team. They're exemplary students at Faribault Middle School, and we are just very excited to have them share their experience.
My experience at the Faribault Middle School has been really good. Last year was a bit rough, but with PBIS more involved, I've seen major differences from last year compared to this year. Like, as a student, I'm seeing classmates that aren't as disruptive, and if they are, they have consequence for it, and they aren't as disruptive as the last time. And it's just been a different experience when I compare classroom to classroom, thinking of what it was like. And my education is a lot better because of it.
Personally, I believe that the school has changed a lot for the better ever since last year. Because last year, I couldn't learn a lot. I learned a lot less than this year because there were a lot of disruptions. People, their friends would try to basically put gasoline on that already raging fire and make more disruptions and encourage the people who are disruptive to do it. But this year, for the first time, I've seen people actually, their friends are helping them, telling them to not disrupt, encouraging them to do things better. I believe it was through the hard work of our people around this. Thank all of you guys for helping.
All right, so if you have any questions for us or for our FMS experts, we are ready to take them.
Board Member Dr. Robichaud.
Just have an observation. You three adults realize that your two students did their presentation without any notes. And here you are, you're all reading them. Nice, thank you very much. I did have a chance to visit the middle school last week, and you can see the culture just bubbling in that school of positive behavior.
The board, Dr. Moore.
Yes, when did you start the program? This program, was it this year, last year?
Mr. Armbruster, I asked him to kind of be the one to head it up, and the idea kind of bubbled my first year there, and it was kind of a dream. And there had been some attempts to start PBS a few years before, and we had to really start by ensuring people that we wouldn't make the same mistakes that were made before and build off of the good things that happened before. So we had to do a lot of groundwork there and getting folks on board first. So it took probably about a year, and then last year Mr. Armbruster started meeting with folks, started a PBIS team, and then this year was the first year that we've been officially part of the PBIS cohort.
Okay. And you said, what was a 40% reduction in behaviors?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. That is outstanding, yes.
I do want to note that since I've been at Faribault Middle School, we've always had really great kids, but now they have the structure, expectations, and consistency to do what they need to do to show us that they're really great kids.
I would add a little, I'm not supposed, I have notes because they say otherwise I go off track real fast. But,
That's okay.
I would just share that we had a SOAR assembly last month, and we spoke to our kids that of the 636 kids that we have that are in and out of our building throughout the day, that 464 have absolutely zero referrals, and another 131 students have just one. So we have 93.55% of our students that have never been to student services. So again, the vast majority of our students are doing a fantastic job every single day.
There's one thing I would just like for you to clarify, because you kind of glossed over it, and I think it was Nate when you were talking about the Falcons Forward program and the recidivism rate that you see come through that program. Can you just speak a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So our Falcons Forward program it's a daily program. It's within a day. When we see a student struggling, we assign them our Falcons Forward program. And within that day, they have allocated time to make sure they're staying up on their missing work for the day, get caught up. But then we add in that, again, that proactive piece of, building that character building lessons. Things like the accountability projects, conversations with admin, ripple effects, which is this great technology that we use that teach students, again, about things like respect and accountability and these really important topics. And through that process, again, just to repeat that number, 93% of our students that have gone through that program this year have not had to repeat it. They've gone through it one time, and they've shown growth and learned from those behaviors.
And Falcons Forward is in lieu of suspensions. We want to keep the students in our building, and if like one of the phrases that they often use in PBIS is, if a student doesn't know how to read, we don't punish them for that. We teach them how to read, or if they don't know, we teach them. So if it's a behavior, then we're teaching them that citizenship.
Ms. Boudreau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is the concept of the PBIS to avoid suspensions entirely, or is it still a tool that you're able to use, and do you use it?
PBIS is a framework that kind of guides our behavior system. The idea is to teach the behaviors ahead of time, not to expect that students just know how to behave, and we're very transparent. And then we use universal language throughout the school so that Solomon doesn't have to go to his math class with one set of rules and then go to his science class with a whole other set of rules. That consistency, so there's predictability there for him, and then for us as a teaching staff as well. So that's the framework that we're building our behavior system on. But for when students step outside of our expectations, we do have a whole toolbox. We like to start, progressively. Like first we like to reteach the behavior, have those restorative chats, but sometimes it has to continue to progress.
Okay. I want to thank you for the work you've done. It's commendable, and it's really drives it home when you bring a couple of students here. And so thank you to both the students for presenting. And I was also impressed. No notes, and that can be intimidating to come come before the boards. You did a good job, and thank you for your leadership to Jesse, Nate, and Stacy on this program. Well, I want to hear what percent we'll be at in the future.
I would encourage you to, if you really want to see these fine students in action, come to our PBS meeting. They lead it. It is their meeting. It's phenomenal. It's really, it's very impressive. So I'm proud of both of them. And the other students that we have on our
Just tell us when it is.
Yeah.
I would like to thank you for coming in, presenting, and students, thank you. You can tell you're engaged students, and you have a passion for learning. I can sense that already. That's why you're there at the school to learn, and your behaviors and your leadership reflect that. I'm also assuming, administrators, that now that PBIS is grassrooted in our elementaries, that this will continue to grow as we roll over, so might make your job a little easier, or because those expectations are started in our elementary schools and then progressing up. So I think that's a really good thing. And exactly, selling it right now and how you did it, sell the staff, sell the students, this is how we act, much like our playbook, et cetera, is where we need to go. So, yeah, so thank you for that very, very much. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our second presentation is School Supplies for All. Mr. Zach Pruitt and Ms. Julie Hull.
Thanks for having us tonight. Our colleague Katie Rothwald, the elementary curriculum coordinator, also should be up here, but she's out of town, so we'll fill in for her and just express immense gratitude for the work that she has played in helping to launch this pilot program. Nasco, if you want to do next slide. For a number of years, there's been a number of community partners that have worked together to make sure that kids had school supplies at the start of school. One of the things that, as folks here know, the demographics of our district have changed quite a bit, and today over 80% of our elementary school students qualify for federal free and reduced lunch. And so as that number has increased, the stress that the demand for school supplies is placed on community groups has really stretched them pretty significantly, to the point where not all the students were able to consistently get the school supplies that they needed to start the school year. And this then places extra stress on classroom teachers to have the tools that they need to be successful. So this year we partnered with the Community Action Center, the Faribault Area Chamber of Commerce, and Supply Our Children to launch the School Supplies for All effort. It was a pilot to eliminate the school supply lists for all children from pre-K up through 8th grade, to really make sure that everyone was able to start on a level playing field at the start of the school year. We have been incredibly grateful to the level of community businesses, service clubs, faith communities, and community members who collectively donated over $65,000 to help support the launch of this pilot. In addition, families whose children don't qualify for free or reduced lunch were asked to also contribute $35 as a fee for their children, and collectively that helped us to be able to launch this effort. And so just wanted to share a little bit of information, some of the data that we collected from the pilot, and answer any questions. But one of the pieces that we wanted to make sure sort of this winter was to take a look at, make sure we were hearing back from both our parents and our teachers about sort of how the pilot went. So we had surveys for both of those populations and had really nice response rates for both. So almost 118 different parents responded. As you can see, it was a really nice cross-section of demographics of our parent population, and a huge thank you to our FACES who helped with completing the surveys in Spanish and Somali with our elementary and middle school parents. Nasco, if you want to go to the next slide. So these are just a couple of the results from parents. School supplies are normally expensive for families, so 94% agreed with that. You can just keep going, Nasco. I appreciated not having to purchase school supplies this year for my child. Again, over 90% said that. We also pulled out on the right what the demographics look like, specifically for our Spanish and Somali speaking families who are part of that larger piece, but just wanted to pull that out as well. I believe School Supplies for All makes it easier for Faribault students and families. 97% of parents agreed with that. And then I believe that should school supplies for all continue next year? Again, 4% said no, but 96% said yes or maybe. So that was kind of the snapshot of what we received from parents. These are, we won't dive into all these, but these are some of the themes that emerged from the comments that parents shared about the pilot and sort of their experience with it. The one thing I would share, because I think it's is just a quote that one of the parents provided in the comments section, and she said, as a mother of 3, this was a huge stress off my mind. School supplies were just about a whole other car payment in the middle of the month. I was able to actually focus on getting my kids ready for school and not just supply-wise. So again, feel really good about both the response rate from the parents and the themes that emerge from that.
So next we're going to talk about teacher feedback. We had 75 teachers respond to our survey, and as you can see, good representation from all of our buildings that were participating in this project as well. So our first question is, I believe school supplies for all makes it more equitable for children attending Faribault Public Schools, and we had a 93% that agreed or strongly agreed, so pretty fantastic results there. This question asks about the quantity of supplies that were given to classroom teachers in this project. 54% said it was better than past supplies when kids brought them in. 23% said they were worse, and about 23% said they were about the same. So again, we had more say that it was better than they had come in within the past. So the next question is about the quality of supplies. 24% that said they were better, 62% said about the same, and then 14% said they were worse. So on the better side, we had a little bit higher, but most of it was approximately the same as what they came in. When asked, should we continue this, overwhelmingly, almost 70% said yes. So some themes that we pulled out from our teachers, is staff reported spending less of their own dollars to help supplement those school supplies that other families were not able to support. So that was alleviated for some of our staff. All kids have the same supplies, so there's no arguing over who has what supplies when you're thinking about elementary buildings, specifically community supplies. And then having materials provided allowed students to focus on learning and not so much the supplies piece at all. So suggestions for moving forward. Not on here, but there has been a committee developed to move forward with this project to, I guess, take in some of these suggestions and make it better. Because in the pilot year, you're going to learn a lot. So some of these things are things that this team is talking about. So one of the things that came up is replenishing supplies during the school year. When we bought kind of for the beginning of the year, but there has been a need, for example, in kindergarten, needing an extra set of crayons halfway through a year. So some of those things that we live and we learn and do better in the future. Another thing is deliveries. Some of the deliveries came a little bit late. We had some of our vendors who actually never delivered our products, so some of us were out gallivanting around, trying to figure out where to get supplies. I kind of hit up the north side of the city. Some of the people hit up down here just so we could make sure that our students had the supplies that they needed. Specific lists for each grade level. This year they were more clumped in grade bands, but we are working with teachers to get more specific lists that are pertinent to the grade level of students. And then stocking supplies, having them in a location, maybe in the building or in the general warehouse for students that transfer in during the school year, making sure that our kids have supplies, because they don't always come with supplies from a former district as well. And if they do, they may not match the supply list that we have. So some of the feedback that we are working through to make this better for future years. And again, a huge thank you to all of our sponsors out there who made this project possible to support our students in their learning.
Questions, board members? A huge thank you to Zach, Julie, and all the others who were involved in this and reaching out to our community. As you can see, we ask and our community provides. It really does. So I know from an ex-teacher standpoint how much money you spent on pencils, pens, paper, not to say hats, mittens, or, sometimes as well either, but just that burden, and everybody's relieved that they have their supplies, I think is a great step. So coming into the school, so yes.
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Rocho.
Logistics, how do the supplies, who purchases them and how do they get to the schools?
Yes.
And then how do they get into the classrooms?
So some of them went to, specifically from vendors that were delivered. Some of them, a good amount of them, we ended up going to stores to actually purchase. We found, and that was because some of the vendors were like, oh, we're delayed, or they just weren't showing up, we're out of stock, and we found out about that in August, so kind of late in the game. So we ended up going to several stores, Walmarts, Targets, all around the state to get the supplies needed, and what we found is that the sale prices through some of those big vendors was actually a lot better to do it in stores, so we have talked about in the future doing purchases that way. Not necessarily going to the stores physically, but ordering through the stores, because those sale prices, they said they would honor for us in those mass shipment things. One of the things we learned is we had a lot of the things shipped right to the warehouse, and they came in like all the scissors together. Well, so then we would have to go through and sort them, and by we, it was Katie, Zach, and I would say Katie, I think, did the most of that, sorting them, getting them on pallets delivered to schools. Then we would use things like gyms to sort them out and teachers to pick them up. What we'd like to do for the future is have them on a pallet per grade level delivered right to the site. So some of those tweaks as we do better.
When you say school supplies for all, you're talking only the public school students.
Correct, all of our Faribault public school students.
I think one of the hopes too is that some of the supplies can be reused every year. As folks who are parents know, you often end up with a lot of scissors coming home by the time your kids are at the end of elementary school, but some of these can be reused every year. So that's also kind of one of the hopes, is that there's some sustainability piece as well from this.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Boudreau?
I feel I need to ask, how much time has this taken from your, whoever, you and Katie, or whoever's doing the purchasing, the traveling, the organizing, and is this the plan to have you continue to do that yourselves, or is it something we could look at, maybe we could have a, well, I'm not sure, but maybe a pair up, or some other paras be more engaged?
Yeah, I think we learned a lot this year. That's a great question. I think we learned a lot on how to streamline it within the district. I think kind of moving forward, it'll fall in the community ed part to be able to help with sort of the coordination piece of that, to be able to help sort of focus in that area moving forward. And I think I will also say we've had tremendous community volunteers too, who have really stepped forward, and many who are really excited to help step forward in the future. Through the chamber, through the Community Action Center, through many of the organizations that financially contributed, also had human capacity that they'd like to step forward. Kind of moving forward, the Supplier Children Group has been a tremendous community resource for a long time. Now that we kind of have the first year, I think, under our belts, I think it will have a better sense of how to do that moving forward.
That sounds good. Sounds like we have a lot of partners and maybe people who are very interested in helping.
Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Dr. Robichaud?
One more question, if I may, Dr. Chair. Do you have any idea of how much it costs to facilitate this supplies for all? How much in donations did you receive?
Over $65,000 from community partners in donations. And I will say that is one of the impetus for doing this work was a recognition of looking at how much families were being asked to contribute to supplies, and it was exponentially more than that. So part of that is also there is some, by thinking together as a collective, we are able to bring some of those costs down for families, which was one of the stress. Certainly, things are expensive these days, and so if it can help to relieve some of the financial burden on families, that's one of the aims.
Thank you.
And just for reference, I don't know that if it helps for sure or not, but I have 2 elementary age children myself in another district that does not have this program. With 2 elementary age students, I paid $300 in school supplies.
Was it, excuse me, per student or
For both
for
of my
both?
kids combined.
$150.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else, board members? Excellent. Thank you for presenting and keeping us updated. Thank you for your work. Agenda item number 4, 4A is Student Board Representative, Ms. Jillian Huberty.
Hi, Issa also wanted me to share that he is absent tonight because his mom is sick, and so he is at home with her, so that is why he's not here. So if you remember back, like a few months ago, I shared our Photo Voice project. I'm gonna explain it again to anyone who doesn't know what that is, and then share an update on that. So our Photo Voice project that District Youth Council was doing was, we had a survey that asked different students, what brings you, it asked 2 different questions. One of them was like, what brings you joy in the community? What brings you hope in the community? And then it was like somewhere that you enjoy being. And so students then submitted pictures of things in the community that, brought them joy, brought them hope. Because I think a lot of the times the community thinks that students don't really love it here, there's a negative connotation, when that's not true at all. Students love it here. It's a great place to be. And so we wanted to share through photos, through a student lens, what brings students hope. And so students from the high school submitted different photos, and those are being compiled together onto a retractable board thing that will be hung up or placed around different parts of the community at different times, so that people in the community can see kind of what brings students hope. We will first share it with the board, but it's a really cool project of just focusing on, positivity and hopefulness on what students see and what they like. So that is currently being produced right now, and it's still at the manufacturer. And then as soon as that's completed, we'll share it here, and then we'll start putting it around different places in the community, like the library, different restaurants, different places, just so everyone can see these boards and what students found brought them hope and what they enjoyed. Last 2 weeks ago, we had 8th graders come to the high school and talk about registration. And with that, we had Issa lead a discussion about youth voice. And a really awesome thing was we had over 20 kids sign up saying that they would be interested in joining District Youth Council next year, which is super awesome. That'd be a 100% increase from what we're at right now. And getting 9th graders involved too is really awesome. Next Tuesday is Youth Day at the Capitol, and Issa and then a few other kids will be joining him at Youth Day at the Capitol, which is a super fun event. And then we have our Spring Data Summit on May 7th. And I've talked about that before, but for those of you who don't know, our Spring Data Summit is a meeting twice a year with Faribault, WEM, Northfield, and TCU, where we get together and we go over different types of data. So in the past, conversations have been about social media and bullying. There's been multiple different categories. We've talked about socioeconomic statuses and free and reduced lunch and benefits like that at schools. And so it's really great to get along with other schools who have very different makeup compared to Faribault. They are a lot different in how they are made up compared to Faribault. So it's really interesting to talk with them and see things that they do at their school. And that will be May 7th. Yeah, that's all I have for a report. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you.
Excellent, Jillian. Thank you so much. 4B, school board members, items of information. Anyone? Dr. Moore?
Yes. I actually missed the very first meeting of the Facilities Committee and had laryngitis and not feeling well. But Mr. Kane Smith gave me a really good detailed summary, and I just want to briefly go over that. The HVAC upgrades at Jefferson and McKinley will begin immediately, I think, from right after school ends this spring or this summer. And they discuss more HVAC upgrades. One of the things he said that we will have a HVAC system that functions, they're pushing for this correctly and is providing the best indoor air quality for our students, and I think that's very important. The air quality is, when I first came on this board, I was thinking, well, we got the academics and achievement, but I think one of the things we have to do is for the safety of our students too. And then just briefly, I think one of the things they're looking at is fixing the greenhouse roof at the middle school and refinishing the pool deck and pool locker room floors at the high school. So we may have to dip into the LTFM funds a little bit, but I think so far, so good, so. So if you need any more information, I've got a whole sheet on here, so. And thanks to Kane for giving me such a detailed summary.
Anything else from any other board members? I'd just like to say, from my end, winter's a great time here for our staff and kids, I do believe. On February 10th, a week ago yesterday, I attended the 6 through 12 orchestra concert at the high school and was amazed. It's so nice to bring the 6th and 7th graders in, and actually played a couple pieces with the entire high school orchestra. It was absolutely phenomenal. So thank you to both orchestra teachers at the middle school and at the high school. It was great. And then I've also attended many middle school and high school extracurricular activities, be it basketball, wrestling, whatever, swimming, whatever. So it's nice to see our kids out and about and doing their best for Faribault High School. So thank you there. Seeing none other, Mr. Benty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So start off, former NHL Minnesota player Nate Prazer and former PWHL player and Olympian Natalie Darwitz visited Roosevelt Elementary a couple weeks ago to teach our students about the importance of exercise and healthy eating. The Wild gave our students some hockey gear that our students can use in their Phi Ed classes and put on a nice little presentation for them. They did some goal shooting, and Nordy was there as well. Unfortunately, Nordy went down after taking a slap shot from Natalie, so I had to step in. And there may be video about this, I don't know if there is or not, but I did successfully stop a slap shot, very, very strong slap shot from probably the greatest NHL player to ever put on skates. So if you want to see it, I'm sure we could dig it up somewhere.
Did you use a stick?
Yeah, big stick, yeah.
Way to go, Superintendent.
To celebrate I Love to Read Month, our early childhood classes have been having guests come in and read to them. I got to visit Miss Erica's and Miss Jeannie's classes earlier this month, and I know that Mrs. Boudreau got to read, as well as Mr. Pruitt, and I will be going to Lincoln on Thursday of this week to do some more mystery reader for them there. Our kindergarten classes had a blast celebrating 100 days of school. Each one of our elementary schools celebrated in their own unique way, and they all did just a wonderful job celebrating 100 days into their learning. Miss Haley Fogelson and Mr. Scott Roiger took 25 6th, 7th, and 8th graders to Mankato to compete in the Math Mania competition last week. We're proud that the students who participated in this competition, one team even took 4th place. And it's just one of the steps that we're taking towards our goal of improving middle level math. So now we take a little commercial break. So last time I asked about readers, volunteers for our reading partners. We're now looking for only 9 more volunteers to join our reading partners team and commit to 1 hour per week of tutoring an elementary student. It ties directly to our district goal around Read Well by 3rd grade. Visit readingpartners.org/volunteer to sign up today. Only 9 spots left. Our Faribault High School students and staff hosted an event to showcase our course offerings and programs to our 8th grade students and get them ready for high school this coming fall. They introduced our incoming freshmen, who are current 8th graders, to the registration options available to them, gave them a tour of the building, and hosted engaging breakout sessions in both the Welcome Center and the Media Center. We can't wait to welcome our future class of 2029. That sounds very futuristic. So we hosted an open house at the Welcome Center at our ALC. It was a great way to show our families the increased resources that are available to them through our ALC programming. Our community education team has decided to start hosting movie nights twice a month in the middle school theater. It's free and open to the public. We even provide popcorn and let attendees vote on what they want to see the next month. And then some upcoming things to keep in mind. We're going to be having a Q&A information session about our English-Spanish dual immersion program on March 17th from 3:30 to 4:30 at Roosevelt Elementary School. All right, so once again, if you're interested in our English-Spanish dual immersion program, it's March 17th at 3:30 at Roosevelt Elementary. Our Emerald Dance Team took third place at sections and then was able to compete at the state tournament this past weekend. And then Faribault Music Department is hosting its third annual mattress fundraiser on Saturday, the 22nd, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. So if you're in need of a new mattress, it's a great price and it benefits our music students. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Venti. Agenda item number 5, public comment. Ms. Kenny, we have no one signed up for public comment. Thank you. Agenda item number 6, our consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of the minutes from the January 27th business meeting, the January 30th, 2025 retreat, and the February 3rd, 2025 work session. Also employment, additional assignments, other authorization of payments, transfers, and investment account, and retirement. Is there a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. No discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to agenda item number 7, District Advisory Committee, no report. District Policy Committee, 8A. Dr. Moore, a report on the Policy Committee minutes.
Yes. Excuse me, I'm just getting over laryngitis, so, we actually, I think the meeting went fairly quickly. We did look at one policy, the whole policy, which is a review of policies. And we will be getting to that one, I believe, later. It was ISD 656 policy. It was not an MSBA policy. It was policy 537, positive school expectations policy. We will be looking to rescind that because of the fact that I don't think we need it because much of it, what was in that policy is in the student handbook. So I think that's going to be addressed later. And then the remaining 6 policies were simply looked at the revisions. And when we can have a review of policy, we can have a new policy. When we have a review and a new, we look at the whole policy. And for revisions, we simply look at the whatever part was revised. Sometimes it's just a matter of one line or one word, or sometimes it can be a couple of paragraphs, but many times too, it's just updating the statute. So, and that was 6 policies there. So,
Thank you. So 8B, first reading of revisions to policies. I'll just read them off for transparency and public awareness. So the first reading is policy 418, drug-free workplace, drug-free school. Policy 515, protection and privacy of pupil records. Policy 519, interviews of students by outside agencies. Policy 522, Title IX sex non-discrimination policy. Policy 614, school district testing plan and procedure. And policy 721, uniform grant guidance policy regarding federal revenue sources. Any questions on the first reading of those 6 policies, board members? Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 8C, approval. Approve second reading of revisions to policies. I am assuming, Mr. Benti, Dr. Moore, we can do these all in one swoop instead of individualize them. We're good with that?
All of these, Mr.
Well,
Chair,
except-
were pushed forward by Policy Committee to be approved by the board.
Okay, thank you. So approval of the second reading of revisions to policies, and they are as follows. Policy 706, acceptance of gifts. Policy 715, post-issuance debt compliance policy. Policy 904, distribution of materials on school property by non-school persons. Policy 710, extracurricular transportation. Policy 712, video surveillance other than on buses. Policy 801, equal access to school facilities. Policy 805, waste reduction and recycling. Policy 807, health and safety policy. And policy 902, use of school facilities and equipment. Is there a motion to approve second reading of revisions to policies as those policies that I've just read? Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. And do we have a second?
second.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Any discussion? 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 Hearing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 8D, rescission of policy 537, which is positive school expectations policy. We have a motion to have rescission of policy 537, positive school expectations policy. Is there a motion? Thank you, Ms. Boudreau.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Knutson. And discussion. Mr. Benty, do you wish to expand on this one at all, or?
As Dr. Moore said, this was a policy that was created quite a few years ago here at the district. It is not an MSBA policy. It was a policy that we created. A lot of the pieces, as you just heard from the middle school presentation this evening, are not part of that because we've moved past this policy in many ways, along with the fact that our student handbooks were actually in this policy, which made our student handbooks policy rather than practice, which created a dual policy piece that they weren't aligned with each other. So after talking with our attorneys, they advised that we remove policy 537 and just continue to approve our student handbooks, and with everything especially that we have in there. And our handbooks are now based at all grade levels on the MSBA student handbook templates.
Very good. Any discussion? Further discussion? Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 9A, Finance Committee report. I will issue that report here of the meeting from February 10th, a week ago yesterday. Not approved minutes, but sent out to me. Thank you, Brett, for doing that, by the way. What we reviewed was the contracts, agreements, bids, and grants for review of the Faribault High School tennis court agreement. Many of these we're going to be dealing with later on in our agenda here. Funding requests for additional security personnel at Faribault High School. And financial performance, we discussed December student counts. Overall, we're down about 65 students as compared to what we had budgeted for. In our December comparative financial report, Ms. Raisler noted that comparing the HVAC and electricity, January of 2025 is high compared to January 2024. Alternately, electricity in 2025 is low compared to 2024. So we don't know if that's because of rebates or something coming back with that, so we're checking into that. In regards to our self-insurance, we are continuing to see a high number of medical claims. Currently, we have about $300,000 in expense over revenue, and that we're expecting, and like the health committee met just a couple times already this month, and we're expecting about a 12 to 15% increase in premiums going forward into fiscal year 26. Our December investment report, Ms. Raisler stated that cash and investments are down in January compared to last month, but we had an almost $2.2 million bond payment in January for our maintenance bonds we received last February. In our December analytics, Ms. Raisler noted that we are right on track with where we thought we'd be at this point, and there's nothing out of the ordinary with our expenses and revenues coming in. Our financial strategies, we had a fiscal year 26 budget discussion, which we will have a presentation later on in the board meeting here. And then we also talked about our finance committee members, encouraging everyone to come to those meetings. And then also we went over an update on the bank RFP, which we'll also be dealing with later on in this meeting. So that's currently what we have, a report from the Finance Committee meeting on February 10th. Ms. Boudreau, do you have anything you'd like to add? Or?
No, thank you.
Very good. 9B, Facilities Committee. Mr. Benty and Ms. Raisler.
And yeah, actually, Dr. Moore covered everything around the Facilities Committee during her board member time. So I was just looking through the notes here, and there was nothing else to add beyond what she said.
Okay, excellent. And then our Community Education Advisory Council met, and Mr. Pruitt, you're going to give us an overview of that.
Yeah, just a quick update of this quarter's committee meeting. Mr. Benty joined the committee to provide an update from the district and answer questions from community partners, which was great to have. Two things just to highlight from the report. Our adult basic education program continues to see record numbers. As you'll recall, last year we had a record number of students and contact hours. This year already we're up nearly 600 hours from this time last year, so over 21,000 hours. It's especially significant because the rest of our region, Owatonna, Albert Lee, Austin, are down almost 9,000 hours. And so for our program to be growing, I think speaks to the great work that's happening at the FEC and the great programming that's available there to the community. And then second, I just wanted to draw people's attention to the sort of the end of the report. We again received the kindergarten readiness analysis results for kids who attended Faribault Public Schools preschool. And what we found again for about, I believe, the fifth year in a row is that students attending Faribault Public Schools preschool are significantly more likely to be ready for kindergarten than students who have other early childhood experiences. And what's really exciting about this is that holds true when we disaggregate based on the student's home language or special education status or socioeconomic status. And so the results consistently year over year, I think, speak to the strength of the early childhood program that Olivia Sage and the amazing team in the early childhood have been able to build. One of the other things that I think is also really important from the district perspective is we've done some analysis and have found that over the last 2 years, 83% of the students who attend our Faribault Public Schools preschool matriculate onto our kindergarten. So not only are students doing well, but they're staying with us into that transition into kindergarten. So really excited about that as well.
Thank you, Zach. Agenda item number 10, 10A, the superintendent mid-year review. I have that. On Monday, February 3rd, 2025, the Faribault School Board met in a closed session to discuss Superintendent Benty's mid-year review on the 3 goals the board approved earlier this school year. Mr. Benty presented a report about his progress made toward those goals to the board. The board reviewed the report and provided feedback to Mr. Benty. The board believes Mr. Benty is making satisfactory progress toward those goals. 10B, Gifts and Donations, Resolution 25-23. Resolution 25-23 is the donation is from Music Mart. Faribault Faribault donated 3 for cello, $100, and 8 foam shoulder rests, $40 to middle school orchestra for students. So could I have a motion for approval of Resolution 25-23? Thank you, Dr. Robichaux. Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Any discussion?
Yes, thank you. I think anything the community can do to help our music program and music students, I think that's, we just thank them very much. And thank you.
Further discussion? Further discussion? This is a resolution, so it is a roll call. Ms. Boudreau, please.
Candace Knudsen? Here. Linda Moore?
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud?
Aye.
Cassie Steves, absent. Chad Wolf, absent. John Bellingham?
Aye.
Linda Boudreau? Aye. We have 5.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Agenda item 10C. Consider designating Reliance Bank for the purchase and sale of investments, for deposit of state aids, for deposit of federal taxes withheld, local taxes and other local revenues, deposit of money received from the school lunch program sales, deposit of fees and other district money received at the middle school and high school for payments of accounts and contracts payable, for interbank transfers, and for payroll processing. So before we begin the discussion, could we have a motion for approval of designating Reliance Bank for the items that I just read? Thank you, Ms. Boudreau.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud, for the second. And I believe we have Ms. Raisler here to, any further discussion or what you would like to present, so.
Yep, so in your board packet, you do have the summary data that Ellers Financial Advisors put together regarding the RFP that we went out for banking services. If you will recall, the reason that we went out for RFP is because our local bank, CCF, has closed their local branch office. And so we needed to look for a bank that's in our community to be able to carry out the transactions as mentioned in the action item. So the reason that we chose to use an outside source is that's how it was done last time we went out for an RFP, which worked out very well because we are talking about something local. So it takes away that, familiarity, relationship, whatever you want to call it, so that we have a non-biased opinion coming forward and a recommendation coming forward. What the report is providing you is the executive summary, the matrix, who who the players were, and then how the final recommendation came forward. So we were first alerted to this in November, and so we quickly jumped on it, knowing that CCF Bank was closing its local branch here in Faribault on February 3rd, so we did have to act rather quickly. So we reached out to Ellers, and they came up with a list of items that for consideration, pieces that would be important to us, and we worked with them on telling them what is important from our perspective as far as what's necessary for a local bank and what we're looking for. So on December 9th, Ellers distributed an RFP to 4 potential banking institutions here in Faribault, and on the 12th of December then, there was a question and answer opportunity for those banks who would be interested in providing us an RFP to ask whatever questions that they were curious about. The RFPs were due then on January 17th, and those who provided an RFP were State Bank of Faribault, Reliance Bank, Premier Bank, and Community Resource Bank, which is actually merging First United. So that's talked about a little bit later. So there were 6 agreed upon categories for the rating. And as you'll note in the executive summary, the ultimate recommendation from Ellers is Reliance Bank. So some of the criteria that we wanted to ensure we were getting provided is a community and school involvement, so that that we knew that they had some philanthropical, and I can't say the word right, efforts, new or additional products that we could use for efficiencies, technologies, and then also knowing their fee structures. So the tasks that we asked Ellers to do are listed on page 3 there: draft the proposal, develop the scoring and criteria, coordinate the distribution of the RFP, evaluate those proposals coming back in, select who would be the finalists, and then ultimately make the final recommendation for us. So again, the list of responding banks is shown on page 4. On page 5, these are our top categories of what's important to us to have in a new banking institution. So we wanted to know what the monthly costs and service and interest rates and those kinds of things are. The involvement of the banking institution within the school as well as our community, what services they offer, what their ratings are, and their diversification, and then we did want to know if they had worked with other public sector businesses. The next few pages then show the evaluations and the scoring of the 4 banks that did choose to provide an RFP. And it was really interesting. One bank provided a 3-page document. One bank provided a 72-page document. So there was quite a difference in how they chose to respond to the RFP. again, starting on page 6, then just kind of gives a brief summary of each bank and then how they scored depending on the category. So the net financial benefit, do they offer a sweep account? And if they do we have to have a minimum balance? And if we do, what is that? And where does the idle money sit and how much can it earn? And those different kinds of criteria were examined. The community engagement, is the bank involved in the community? How is it involved? What does it do? Comprehensive services. You'll see some different types of platforms that different banks use and what we were used to versus what that bank had to offer. Their financial stability, their strengths, where they, where they're sitting as far as a capitalization level. Are they solid, basically, is what we were looking for. And then, did they have any experience in the public sector? So so Ellers then took a look at those RFPs and individually gave them scoring. They had their rubric system, gave them scoring, and then determined what that total point awarded was. And ultimately, the bank with the most points turned out to be Reliance for a variety of reasons. I'm not gonna go through each bank's scoring, but if you do have questions, I'm happy to answer it. So the way that it all shook out was based on the scoring and what the weight of each category was able to provide us a clear indicator of who would best serve Faribault Public Schools. We're used to certain different add-ons, if you will. So we use positive pay as an example. So that's to ensure that no one can take a check of ours and cash it for a different amount than what was actually written for, or a different person couldn't be able to cash that check, that sort of thing. So we have different mechanisms already in place, and so we wanted to ensure that they had those value benefits already in their system. We use a sweep account, so money coming in, money going out. One of the really high of importance to us was the collateralization, because we are a school district, and so we have to have 110% of our funds collateralized by the bank, and that's a big deal. So we insisted that it had to be $5 million. Now, we normally don't have $5 million in our banking account at the local level. However, we do once in a while. And so if we do go up to that $5 million, we need to ensure that they can collateralize that amount at 110%. So it's pieces like that that we really put a stronger point value towards. It had more weight, if you will. So after looking at all of that criteria and basically going through the different RFPs and through those pieces, Ellers did come to the finalization that the recommendation is Reliance Bank. You have the scoring information there, and you have a brief summary of each bank. My recommendation is that we follow Ellers' recommendation and go forward with Reliance Bank.
Thank you, Ms. Raisler. We do have a motion and a second for approval of designating Reliance Bank. So discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Boudreau.
I do have a question, because the scoring that Ellers completed essentially eliminated a couple of banks that would currently is included in our investment report.
Yes.
One of those banks is merging.
Mhm.
What would be the status? Would that change the status of our investment report at all?
No.
Those
So
banks
we will.
would remain.
Correct. So we'll continue to have those investments with whichever banks we have right now. And yes, even the one that's merging, we will continue to have, some investments there. That's something that was purposefully done years ago, and so we will continue with that. What we're looking at is more who is going to be able to run the heavy lifting day-to-day type of activity that we need in a local bank.
Thank you.
Yes.
Further discussion? Discussion? Last call? Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of designating Reliance Bank for the purchase and sale of investments, et cetera, as I read. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Ms. Racer, if you want to stay right there because you're on next. 10D, consider approval of the Faribault High School 2024 to 2044 tennis court agreement. So could I have a motion for approval of the Faribault High School 2024 through 2044 tennis court agreement?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. I'll second that. And discussion, so, and Barbie, if you want to explain this?
Yeah, so this is, this actual agreement isn't due until 2029. So I asked, why is this being presented to us? And the response that I received from our activities director is that there's a person at the city that's going to be retiring, and they're trying to get all these leases renewed and the agreements kind of buttoned up before that person is gone. So there is nothing different in this agreement than what was approved of in 2009 at that time. And that was also a 20-year cooperative agreement with, for the tennis court facilities. So there is no difference in the language except the dates.
Discussion? Discussion? 2044 seems like a long time out, but in reality, it'll come quicker than we think, but
Possibly the same board would be in.
thank you, Dr. Rose. Okay, pulling it back to center here. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Raisler. 10E, consider approval of funding request for additional security personnel at Faribault High School. Mr. Joel Olson will present, so could I have a motion for approval of funding requests for additional security personnel at Faribault High School? Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. Do we have a second? Thank you, Ms. Knutson. And before we begin discussion, Mr. Olson, I'll let you take it from there.
Thank you. Yeah, my request is to add a security / student connector person at the high school that has a regular presence in the hallways throughout the day. Right now, we have teachers that we assign duties to, and every hour we have different teachers that are patrolling the hallways, checking bathrooms, talking to kids, getting them where they need to go. And that's inconsistent, with each new teacher being there each day. So the request is to have a person that would be a consistent person hour to hour. Not only, talking to kids, getting them where they need to go, checking bathrooms, but also checking security of the building, making sure doors aren't propped open, going out into the parking lot and checking on kids that might be out in their cars. And so that person would work directly with our SRO and the administrative team to be that consistent person within the building to make sure our place is secure and kids are where they're supposed to be.
Thank you. Discussion.
I have a couple questions.
Ms. Boudreau, before you begin, Board member, just want to inform you that this request was approved unanimously by the Finance Committee last week. So go ahead, Ms. Boudreau.
My first question is about if this is ongoing, and I'm not sure if that was stated. I mean, would this be, something we could try first, or will it just be ongoing? And I don't know if you know the answer to that, Joel.
The intent is if we could start it this year yet, to make it an intervention for this year. And if it goes well and we get the right person there to continue that on us for next year.
So perhaps, Mr. Chairman, we could evaluate the effectiveness
Sure.
For the next,
Mhm.
the next year, school year. The other question I had is, and I asked, board members, I asked Mr. Olson a lot of questions, and he responded quite thoroughly to my questions. One of them was, I asked about whether or not we were utilizing a wand, which we're talking about vaping in the bathrooms right now, and that wand can detect either a vape dispenser who has it on them, because often these things happen, the disruption happens, but by the time anyone's there, you don't know who was participating. So what I received for a response was that we don't have it in our handbook to be able to utilize that, and I'm wondering what the board feels about that. If that's something, I certainly think consequences are very important, and finding out maybe who is bringing in the device this is one way to do that. And I am looking at some guidance as to whether or not we could add that to our handbook, that we will utilize all tools at our dispense, one being a wand. A metal detecting wand, I think. I don't know the title of it exactly.
Yeah, it would detect metal, yes, yes.
Is that correct?
Yes,
Am I stating it?
the wand, we have a wand, and it does detect metal. So when we do a search of a student, we search the backpack, we search the person, but the search of the person is having them open up their pockets, lifting up their pant leg, taking their shoes off. But that's the extent of the search. We don't pat them down. We don't do strip searches, anything like that. So if there's nothing found on the person when they empty out those pockets or the backpack, there's not much we can do. And so wands would be able to, if you scan the person, if they've put it on their person, that would be a potential area that you could see that they might have placed that vape cartridge or whatever.
Thank you. So is there an opportunity for this board to add this to our handbook? And maybe I need to ask our superintendent if that's something doable.
The wanding is very much a gray area when it comes to vapes or searching for something other than a weapon. We looked into this last school year, and what we were able to find out was that we were able to find some school policies that were from New York State that talked about schools that had wanding policies, but they were all focused on searching for weapons. They were not focused on searching for anything other than weapons. When we contacted our attorneys, they said it is very much a gray area. It is something that you can do, but it could also be considered an invasion of privacy. And you would have to be conscious of the fact that it does pick up metal, so it's going to pick up underwire brawls. It's going to pick up any other metal that the student might have on their person. So it's, while they didn't say we can't, they said it is very much a gray area that has not been tested legally in the areas searching for anything other than weapons.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask, are other schools utilizing this in our Big Nine? Do you know that?
Not that I know of.
Okay. I guess this is just some discussion at this point, but this problem is not new. It's been around, sounds like last year you're stating you had this discussion, and I think it is an invasion of privacy for our bathrooms to be used by people who are vaping and not available for other students for use. And I also think it's a safety issue for all of our students. I think it's unfair that maybe there isn't enough consequences being meted out for those violating those policies. We have a alcohol, drug, and tobacco-free environment here, but yet we don't. And so I also think it's unfair that students who are participating in athletics have a much more severe consequence than some of these people that are not involved there. So I guess what I'm saying is, I feel that we should use every tool available and try to remedy these violations and this abuse to the rest of our students. And I am going to be supportive of this request, but I still would like to know if it's effective before it's renewed or continued in the fall. It's just my position.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Other discussion? Ms. Knutson?
So we have vape detectors in some of the bathrooms?
Yep.
And how effective are they?
They're inconsistent. They will sound an alarm to our phones that if it could be a vape, any other kind of mist, perfume. So they're not strictly designed to smell of vape or tobacco, smoke or anything like that. So essentially, we get the notification, and generally it's Joe or Allison will go to that bathroom, and by the time you get there, students are gone. So they're inconsistent, and frankly, they do go off regularly, and so you just don't get to those things because of other things you're doing in the day. So they're not consistent, but we use them as we can when they're working right. Not all the bathrooms have them, but yeah, it's not a great system.
And who responds to them?
One of the three of us, and the SRO gets it on, believe gets it on his phone too.
So the SRO does as
Yeah.
well? Okay. And so because I spend a fair amount of time at the high school, I see a lot of students going into the bathrooms, and we have the passes that they have to fill out. And I'm not sure how those work as far as, some of our students are in the bathrooms, between classes, during class, and I was there the other day after school, and I noticed like about 15 boys go into the bathroom after school. So it's kind of like before school, after school, throughout the day. It's a nightmare.
It is, yep.
It is crazy.
It is a nightmare. The reasons for what they go in there for, they're not necessarily good reasons not to use it. And I'll go on the announcements in the morning and say, stay out of the bathrooms. Go in there for what you're supposed to go in there for. We've done, and Joe and Allison have been better at this than I have, but they'll start camping out in the hallways, during the hour and around the bathrooms. And so, you're taking administrators that are now babysitting bathrooms and taking away from the other duties that they have. And so it's the need, and you can talk to our chem health folks. Kids are addicted, and if that's what they're going in there to do, it's potentially because of an addiction. And so, talked about some of the processes that Ms. Boudreau had asked me about. What are some of the things that we do? Anytime we get those kids, we bring them into the office, we do the search, we bring them to the nurse to get evaluated on their vitals. And then depending on the situation there, we contact parents every time. And then they get a chem referral to Health Finders. And there's groups that Health Finders runs. They do one-to-one things. We have 2 Promise Fellows that we were able to add this year that work in our ISS room. So kids, in some cases, there might be a group of kids, and Joe has said, I just bring them right to the ISS room, and then they start, there's a program that the Promise Fellows do with them during the hour that they have them. And so there's things that we're doing, and the intervention team consists of counselors, social workers, the health finders folks, admin counselors, and they're constantly reevaluating what's working and not working. And for some kids, it does work. But we have that group of kids that this just is not working for them. And, we talk about suspension. And my philosophy is that, the middle school talked about PBIS, and we're gonna be a pilot for that next year. Because I believe that, consistency from elementary through the high school, if it works in one place, let's do it in the next place. So we're gonna be in that cohort next year. But there's gotta be a reason why kids, one, don't wanna go to class. And that's, we have to work internally about, is it the content? Is it the teaching, the way we do the teaching? Kids not feeling connected. And then when you suspend kids, they're missing out on that teaching. And then when they miss out, they get behind, they get frustrated, and then they continue to skip because they feel like they're not going to catch up. So we got to intervene somehow that way. So to suspend, they're going to come back, and we got to have something for them. And we've got a lot of resources for these kids. And it just takes time to have this work. And, this is one way potentially that we have getting the right person that can connect with kids that they see every hour. And that person knows it's those same kids every hour, that we can intervene on a greater level. When we have teachers doing it, they don't pass off the report of who we saw in the hallway this hour. It's like the next person just turns the radio in, and then the next person comes up. So it's a consistency piece. I don't know if it'll work. We're trying to, if we had the answer, or if other schools had the answer, we'd have it fixed. So, and it's not just a Faribault problem, but I got to worry about Faribault. I'm not going to compare myself to other school districts. This is what we got to worry about. So, I'm asking if we can see if this is something that will work. Other districts do have similar people, I talked to the Mankato East principal yesterday. They have 4 people that are their hallway people, in addition to the SRO. Elberly has 2. Owatonna has 2. So they do have people that are doing this work, and they're trained in working with students. And it's not just a hammer. It's not just a police officer. It's someone that's, trained with how to work with kids and talk to kids and build relationships with kids. And so I'm hoping that, this is one thing that maybe is another tool that we can put in our toolbox.
Dr. Moore?
Yes, so just, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that this is taking more and more of administrative time
Most definitely.
as it goes on, time goes on.
Yeah, we have rolling desks, standing desks that we roll out into the hallways, and we'll go stand out in the hallways. And it's a deterrent for some of those bathrooms or some of those areas, but the layout of the building, is big. Even for a school our size, it's pretty big. So to get to those places with 3 people, or with adding our SRO 4 people, it's just hard to manage that building with that limited number. But then, like you said, administrative time with, doing teacher observations, getting into classrooms, doing those things that we really get into this work for, to be with the kids and helping our instruction get better and things like that. It gets taken away by the time spent doing these things, and more of our time is being spent policing.
Mr. Chair, one of the questions I asked Mr. Olson was about how many suspensions were imposed, and there was only 1 suspension. And Mr. Olson reminded me that there are some state guidelines. Maybe you could share that.
Yeah, so non-exclusionary discipline. So the state statute, has stated that you need to do everything you can to not suspend kids. And so when I talk about these interventions, whether it's the ISS, working with chem health finders, those kinds of things, those are all interventions to not suspend kids. And so when we do meet with a student, when there's a suspicion of vaping, we We bring them to the office, we do the search, we refer to the nurse to do vitals. If none of that comes back where a student is, whether they might have a fever or something that the nurse says, no, they check out okay, we send them back to class. We call the parents, but we send them back to class. Without finding something on them, that's the tough part. On suspicion, it's just, you could have been there at the wrong place at the wrong time. And so that's the way we've taken that directive from the state about non-exclusionary discipline. Do as much as you can before you have to suspend a kid.
So, Mr. Olson, if the third offense, would that justify suspension at that time?
If the same situation happened with the third time, there was nothing found on the student, they checked out with their vitals, we wouldn't suspend.
So I'm feeling like we're really going in a circle here. We don't have a wand to use, we're not gonna suspend. What is the deterrent? I mean, we really don't have a good deterrent for this behavior to stop it. And I guess I'm just a little bit frustrated that we can't use a little bit stronger discipline, especially when athletes have a very heavy discipline. So I'm gonna just end my questions, but I'm frustrated.
Well, and one thing that I think triggers students out in the hall is the phones. And so I know that there's different deterrents, and I looked into the Yonder pouches, and I think that might be a good idea for next year to implement them so that students do not have their phones and have to go to the bathrooms because in the classroom, they're not supposed to be able to access them.
Correct.
And so oftentimes they go to the bathrooms to do that. And then also they communicate with each other to meet in the bathroom at the same time. I would like to see more of the SRO and staff members standing outside. And I think the boys' bathroom is the biggest problem. But I go into the girls' bathroom and I go, oh, the music's on, class is gonna start, get going. And, 10 girls will walk out. If teachers could walk in as well and even just wash their hands, it could deter kids from all the crazy stuff they do in there, or if it is crazy stuff.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms.
So,
Boudreaux.
Are you saying that this is coordinated through their cell phones, a lot of this activity? And if so, I guess I just want to ask Mr. Olson, is our cell phone policy being upheld?
It works in the classrooms, I think, for the most part. It's also not perfect. I think there's consistency among staff that some apply it stronger than others. It's when we meet as a staff, we talk about that, how's it going, and make sure we're all on the same page. Kids can use them in the hallways during about passing time and at lunch. This was a shift from last year where we had a cell phone policy in spirit. This year if a teacher tells us to come and get a phone, we come and get the phone, and we have a cell phone locker in our office, and we take anywhere from 6 to 10, 12 phones a day. So the next step in that would be to, they don't get to have them out in the hallways, don't get to have them out at lunch. That would be another step, and probably more policing that would take place for that. Right now, there's, at lunch, we have 2 or 3 people that are supervising lunch. But this was a kind of a step towards having no phones in the building during the day. The kids don't use lockers, so it's tough to say, put it in your locker. It's on their backpack or on their person. So yeah, I think that's a step towards getting it better, yeah.
I'd like to pull the discussion back to your proposal on adding, for vaping, student truancy, and maybe possible other drug use or some use within the bathrooms. First of all, Mr. Olson, I want to thank you for bringing this forward. I think it was addressed. I know some staff and community members are concerned and brought this forward, and you've come up with a solution. I will support it 100%, and I think I've told you privately that if you wanted more, I'd be in support of more. For transparency's sake, so some of us know the building a little bit better, having coached there, whatever, it's a huge building. You have bathrooms on opposite ends of the academic wings. You have bathrooms on the main level by the north gym. You have bathrooms and locker rooms on the south end by Nomeland. It's a huge area to detect and things, and so, and this whole addiction piece, I agree with. I've been to a lot of activities, and I can't count how many times I've asked people to put out their cigarettes or not vape on school property or public property. I've been talked to not so nice. I've been cursed at. I've been if I was the police or whatever. But I'm a citizen. It says no use on here. So your cause here of trying to address this problem is going to work. We need to address the problem somewhere, somehow, and the kids that are addicted, they need help. And I think we're doing the right thing of that point. What I like to see, the court system has the same thing. The same people come through, keep coming through. What do you do at some point? I know that's a frustrating point. Do we suspend? But that's not helping them academically. It's really not helping them with their addiction problems. So thank you for addressing that. And I know the question is, why, from people who said, why aren't things being done? They are being done. And those students have data privacy as well for a discipline. We're not going to say, well, yeah, here's the name of this student and this is what we did. We can't do that, and we're not going to do that. So thank you for your efforts in getting this in. Again, as our handbook says, we're chemical, alcohol, tobacco free, and we're trying to do our best, but we have adults from the community when they come in. I mean, basketball game last night, vaping in the men's bathroom. It's adults as well. So we'll work with our kids. We'll try and help them with this stuff, and recognize to the public and to our students and staff that yes, there's an attempt to do something here to assist people to make our environment better. So that's my stance there.
Thank you.
In there. So, any other discussion, board members? Jillian, would you like to chime in?
Yeah. I just think, talking about this from a high school standpoint, I do want to bring up the one thing with phones meeting up. Kids are going to find a way to meet up no matter what, because you guys found a way to meet up in school before there were phones. Like, there's ways to find it. So I think the phone policy is really working. I don't think that is a major cause of that. Second of all, vaping is an addiction, and addictions can't be solved by just saying, no, don't do that, you're in trouble. That it doesn't fix the problem. It's going to take a holistic approach to do this, and I think that Mr. Olson's idea of adding one person, and honestly, I think we should add more. You said Albert Lee had 4, or Mankato East. Considering how big the school is, it takes a minute to walk down the hallway to get from the men's bathroom to the women's bathroom. That would help build relationships, and that takes on part of that holistic approach. And then if there are the same students, then we go through the process that is already set of, having a referral for chemical health, whatever, meeting with health partners. But I think that this is a really important step, and honestly, I think that there should be more than one person because the school is so big. But at the end of the day, vaping is an addiction, and addictions, again, need a holistic approach to stop. And we don't want kids out of school, because if they're out of school, they're not going to stop vaping. They're just going to be outside of school vaping. So now they're not learning at all. So I think it's really important that we take these positive, holistic approaches to it. And I think this is a really great way to start. And even seeing if it goes, adding more people in next year. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Any further discussion? We do have a motion and a second for approval of the funding request for additional security personnel. Don't see anyone else. Okay, we're ready to vote. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Olson, very much. Looking at the agenda, school calendars and budget initial reductions and enhancement, I think at this point, the chair will issue a 7-minute recess. We're stretched here, and we'll come back at, let's do 7:15. We will start again at 7:15. We're in recess. back to order. We are now on agenda item 10F. Consider approval of the 2025-2026 school calendar. Mr. Benty, you're going to present, but could I have a motion for approval of the 2025-2026 school calendar, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Knutson. And Mr. Benty, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the memorandum that you have there on the 25-26 school calendar, just some highlights there, that there was a survey that was sent out to staff, 182 responses that were received back. You can see the calendar committee members that are there. We had 2 meetings where we went through the survey and made some changes based off of what the survey said, and then also what we have seen this past year and the year before that are some of the changes we want to make. This calendar includes 165 student conduct days for elementary, 166 days for secondary, and 185 contract days total. You'll see by looking at the calendar itself that we are continuing forward with our Falcon Days, which are roughly 1 per month. Those have come in immensely useful in the sense of, or in the way of the state requiring us to do regular professional development around the READ Act. And we were actually able to get out in front of that, and this calendar has allowed us to do that with almost no changes needed. Other districts were caught off guard by that legislation and had to, some of them right before the school year began, had to redo their entire calendar or had to subtract up to 8 days of student learning to get in the professional development that was required by the state. So what you can see there is for the 25-26 school year, we are looking to start after Labor Day. And I will entertain any questions at this point.
Board members. Dr. Moore.
Yes, I was looking at, you said 165 contract days for elementary, secondary, 166. What was it last year? And
I believe it was the same last year, yes.
Was it the same last year? I'm just going to say that in the last year, I've gotten a number of complaints from parents about the schedules and about the number of days off. So I guess I'm a little concerned about that. I know I looked at November for each year. I think 3 out of the 4 weeks, there's less than 5 days. In December, there's 2 out of the 4 weeks. February, 2 out of the, it's 2 weeks that are full and 2 weeks not. And in March, we only have 1 full week. I understand that the holidays come in there, but I guess as a member of, I do represent the public. They are a bit concerned about that, especially, the parents. It interferes with some of the schedules, and so I've had a few complaints about that, so I wish we could have, I think I did express my concerns to the calendar committee, but just looking at some of these, I'm not sure that this is the best we can do, so that's my...
So those concerns were taken into account, and those Falcon Days were moved to mostly, I believe, Fridays, which allows then parents to, if they want to have a 3-day weekend or have that time with their children.
Okay, yeah.
So those pieces.
That was one of the suggestions that I
those
put
concessions were
forward,
made, yes.
So, okay.
Further discussion? Last call for discussion. Hearing none. All in favor of the motion to approve the 2025-2026 school calendar signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1. 10G, consider approval of the 2026-2027 school calendar. Could I have a motion to approve the 2026-2027 school calendar? Thank you, Ms. Boudreau.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Robichaud. Discussion. Mr. Benty, do you want to?
Yep, so same process applied. We did the 2 of these together. We haven't done a 2-year calendar in a while. That's was one of our goals as a district administrative team was to try to have a 2-year calendar. So like I said, same process applied, same number of days that you see there at the bottom. In the 26-27 school year, we will be starting before Labor Day. And the breaks match up almost the exact same way. Once again, concessions were made to put our Falcon Days attached to weekends so that families would have that ability to get out of town if they chose to. And one of the changes is that we're looking for June of 2027 to break tradition a little bit and have graduation on a Friday evening instead of a Sunday afternoon. So we're hoping to get more of our staff to participate if it's butted up against the school year rather than be gone for a few days and then need to come back. So.
Discussion, board members.
Mr. Chair, I just want to comment, I'm pleased to see 2-year calendars that really facilitates planning for parents, for staff, and for students. It's good to see that. Sometime I would like to see an alternative calendar that, addressing some of Dr. Moore's concerns about the number of times there's a gap in student learning. We all know that time on task is the critical variable for student achievement. And it'd be nice to see a year-round calendar sometime. Just a comment.
45-15.
Doesn't have to be 45, it could be anything that extends the school year.
Excellent. Further discussion? Last call for discussion. Hearing none. All in favor of approval of the 2026-2027 school calendar signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1. 10H, a report, special education child count. I see that's for Mr. Dainert. I do not see him. Oh, there you are. Hello, Mr. Dainert. Sorry, I didn't see you on the screen. Can you hear us okay, Mr. Dainert? Can you hear us now, Mr. Dainert?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay. You're a little bit ahead of your live video stream, so I was not as prepared. This evening, I'm here to talk about the special education child count. Each December, the Minnesota Department of Education requires us to submit the number of special education students we have enrolled who are residents of our school district, and they use that calculation to figure out our federal special education funds as well as some of our special education compensatory aid. I use the number to track and kind of give a snapshot of where we're at in the district and what direction we're moving towards. Overall, this is a 5-year review or actually a 6-year review of the December 1st child count. As you can see, the last 3 years we've remained almost stagnant. 3 years ago, I came and expressed my concern that our numbers were rising pretty significantly, especially after COVID, and it seems that the numbers have leveled off to be roughly about 845, 843 students this year. So that's a good piece of news. This is a different way to look at this chart. The blue line is actually the students who are residents of Faribault Public Schools. The green chart is the ones who actually come to our schools. A number of the students are open enrolled into Northfield, and we pay tuition for the students there. Some are at SevSec, some are at Medford, and some are at Owatonna, as well as some other areas. But overall, we work with around 663 students in our programs every single day. This is a breakout of where our disabilities lie, where our child count lies by disability. It's pretty reflective of what's been happening for several years. We have our highest population is significant learning disabilities, followed by speech language impairment, and then a virtual tie for ASD and developmental delay, and EBD and OHD at lower levels. That's remained pretty consistent for the past several years. This is the chart I want to spend a few minutes talking about. This is a reflection of what settings our students are in. The federal government in the IDEA legislation has settings laid out by certain time constraints. So a setting 1 student is in the general education classroom a majority of the school day, out in a special education program maybe 20% of the day or less. The blue section, the setting 2 students, are anywhere from 20% to 60% outside of the general education classroom. And the purple area is students who are outside of the general education classroom a majority of their day. And those are the ones that I'm most concerned about this year. As I mentioned about 3 years, when we expanded our programming, we were looking at a pretty significant gain in students who had our most significant needs, students with developmental cognitive delays, students with autism spectrum disorder, nonverbal students, students with some pretty significant disabilities. As you can see, the purple line, about 5 years ago, we had 49 students in our Setting 3 programs. This year, we have 76 students in our Setting 3 programs. And while I did anticipate that we were going to have a larger jump in students that require that level of service by expanding our program several years ago, I'm finding that once again, we're having trouble meeting the need of all those students because of caseload limits set at the state level. This is a different way of looking at that same chart. So as you may know, we're reorganizing our elementary schools to have 1 pre-K building and 2 elementary schools. As part of that, I looked at where we projected the students from Roosevelt would go based on the border information that I had at the time, so that I can see where our caseloads would be to know if I needed to move any staff around. So the current year on the left side of the chart, Roosevelt has 4 Setting 1, Setting 2 teachers, and they have a caseload averages of about 12.75. Jefferson has 4 FTEs, a caseload average of 11.5, and Lincoln has 4 FTEs, a caseload average of 13. Next year, I project those caseloads to go up a little bit. We're going to reduce an FTE or repurpose an FTE at Roosevelt and keep Jefferson and Lincoln the same in our Setting 1 and 2 programs, but their caseloads will go up by 1 to 3 students in those programs. So I think that we have enough room to absorb our Setting 1 and Setting 2 students, and I'm not concerned about them. What I am concerned about is our Setting 3 students. Currently, Roosevelt has 2 classrooms with 7 students in each classroom. Jefferson has 2 classrooms with 6 students in each classroom. And Lincoln has 2 classrooms with 8 students in each classroom. The problem we're having is that one of those students is in 5th grade. The rest are 3rd grade or below. So our programs, our Setting 3 programs are mostly filled with younger students who aren't transitioning to the middle school as fast as I'd like to make room for all the early childhood students coming in. Next year, we project that we're going to have 20 total students at Jefferson, 23 at Lincoln, and 14 at Roosevelt. Those would be the students coming into kindergarten from our early childhood program. This creates a space problem because what we're finding is that when you have more than 8 students in a classroom, the classroom gets fairly chaotic because of all the needs in the classroom. So our preference is to have those classrooms with about 3 to 4 adults and about 7 to 8 students in them. Much more than that, we tend to get into more aggression, more students who are not able to regulate. But in order to keep caseloads at that level, I'm finding that I need to add an FTE teacher at Jefferson Elementary and an FTE teacher at Lincoln Elementary, just to keep them, the caseloads where they're at now in our Setting 3 programs. That makes me nervous because, again, our overall numbers aren't increasing, but the numbers of students with significant needs are. And so we're having to respond to that in the best way that we can. As far as other programs, we also have a Setting 3 program for students with behavioral skills. Currently, those 2 classrooms are at Lincoln Elementary, and we're looking to keep those 2 classrooms at Lincoln Elementary and then repurpose one of the FTEs at Roosevelt for the kindergartners who are coming in with significant behavior concerns. But we can do that with the current staffing that we have now and don't need to add any FTE for that. This is, again, another way to look at it with Roosevelt, with all the different Setting classrooms all together. I'm looking at 3 FTEs of teachers in the Setting 1 program and 2 programs, 1 FTE in a behavioral skills classroom, and then 2 FTEs to absorb the 14 students that we're getting from early childhood who need a Setting 3 functional skills program. And then at the other buildings, similar at Lincoln, I have 3 teachers who teach SLD, EBD, ASD at a Setting 1 level, and an EBD, ABS teacher at the Setting 1 and 2 level. I have 2 EBD Setting 3 classrooms, and I would be looking to add 1 more DCD classroom to have 3 FTEs there. And then the profile at Jefferson is similar, except there is no Setting 3 behavioral program at Jefferson. So later on, you'll see in our budget enhancements, I have several positions listed there that I feel that we need to absorb the students that we're getting from early childhood. And I do want to note that these are not students that we would have this problem regardless of reorganization because of the nature of the students that we're seeing come to Faribault. So this is not a problem, or this is not an issue that I wouldn't have to come to the board and ask for staff. It just so happens to be at a time when we're also reorganizing. But I'm looking at adding 2 FTEs of teachers to do functional skills rooms at Lincoln and 1 at Jefferson. 7 paraprofessionals to staff those classrooms, and 1 DAPE teacher because of the increase in students. Many of the students require Phi-Ed outside of their general education Phi-Ed class and an adaptive Phi-Ed class. So I'd certainly be willing to take any questions about that, about any of this.
Questions, board members? Thank you, Mr. Daner, by the way. Thank you so much. Mr. Daner, looks like you've answered it well, presented well. We have no questions, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Item 10I, initial budget reductions and enhancement, a report. And Mr. Benti, I will turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have everyone that will be coming up and sitting to help answer questions that the board will have and to also be helping out with the presentation as well. So they do have their name tags in case you have a moment and don't remember their names, or if I have a moment and don't remember their names.
The trouble is, my moment goes longer and longer and longer.
So as they're getting settled in, one of the things that I do just want to discuss here at the beginning, Barbie and Nicole will be doing the majority of the presenting here because we're talking about finances and HR pieces. But this team has really come together. They make up the majority of our district leadership council, which we meet every other week to discuss what are the needs of the district and what are the changes that we need to make moving forward. Just to kind of give you an update on where we are. So if you have looked at any of the budget shortfalls that are happening across the state when it comes to school districts, what you'll see is that there are some really, there are some districts that are in some dire financial situations right now. And this comes 2 years after the historic funding by our state. So I think that shows the impact of mandates, if I can just say that, but also our unfunded mandates, I should say, but also the understanding of where we were school finance wise on the revenue side going into 2 years ago, considering that we had historic funding and the majority of districts in the state are still either there or are potentially worse off than they were 2 years ago. Just looking across our conference, we are we are the lowest district that has a deficit by right now, besides one. And that there's one district that actually had an increase in enrollment. They had some school closures and had some sizable increases in their enrollment, so they don't need to reduce this year. But most of the districts are ranging from, I think it was like 1.3 million up to $6 million in budget reductions that they're facing right now. So for us sitting here saying that, we're looking at roughly 600, and we're saying 600 because that's what the statute is telling us right now, but understanding that if the governor's proposal goes through on the compensatory aid, we would actually be sitting plus 280, 279, something like that. So we're kind of playing right in this area right now that we want to be financially and fiscally responsible and make our reductions that we need to make. But we also have the opportunity now to try out some enhancements as well. And you're going to see a few of those here tonight. We will also, depending on how things go in the legislature and the feeling that we're getting, we're planning on, if things go positively for us, we're planning on bringing more enhancements this spring as we can justify them financially. So tonight is a discussion piece, or it's a report, I guess I should say. But with the understanding that you will vote on this on, I believe it's March 3rd,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, thank you. But the understanding that if things continue to look favorable for us, we're going to look at continuing some enhancement pieces into April and maybe even May for this upcoming school year. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Ressler and Ms. Yoakum.
Okay, so good evening. Like Mr. Benty mentioned, Barbie and I will be going through this presentation that you have in your board packet. However, at the end, we're all here together to be able to provide additional input to you regarding any questions that you have or any additional information that you need from us. So going through the presentation, this first slide just gives you a general overview on where we landed when we went through our entire budget adjustment and enhancement process. So as a team, we came together and we were able to come up with reductions in the amount of $794,200. And then we also talked through enhancements that we're proposing in the amount of $537,400 for a net proposed adjustments of $256,800. So we'll go into a little bit more depth in that in a few slides here. So right at first, we'd like to just go through the timeline with you. The timeline is rather short and aggressive. However, I think we're all comfortable with it and we feel okay with it. So today is the 18th, of course, we're here presenting this to you for the first time to review. Then we're going to ask you to have a special meeting on March 3rd, which is very soon. It is when you have your next work session scheduled, so we're going to ask you to consider adding a special meeting to that board meeting, either right before or right after, however you see fit. Right after that meeting then, the finance team and the HR team will work together those next few days to operationalize the adjustments. So basically what that means is my team will work on figuring out the who is behind all the adjustments, and Barbie's team will work on putting a costing to the names so that we can ensure that we're comfortable with our dollar target still at that point. Then later that week, once we have everyone identified, our admin team will be meeting with the affected staff so that they're all aware that their position is going to be affected by the proposed adjustments and enhancements. Later on that month, we have a board meeting, which is early in March because we have spring break. So that is on March 17th, and that would be the day that we would be bringing to you the action to act on the proposed non-renewals of all the affected staff members.
The next slide then talks about the enrollment and where we're looking for our enrollment figures. And these are, this is information, past history data that you've seen before, and then projecting out to 2028. So as we know, we are in a decline mode right now. So we finished fiscal year 24 with 3,060 average daily membership students, if you will. What was budgeted for fiscal year 25 or currently is 3,029. What I'm projecting for next year is 3,000 students. And so using the survival cohort method where you simply take, what the trend is showing us and moving that forward, you can then see the projections for FY 27 and FY 28. And so again, we're taking current data that we have today and projecting that forward so that we can make sound decisions on what we would be getting for revenue, because enrollment drives most of the revenue that we have. The next slide then talks about what our enrollment history and our projections going forward, what those budget cuts were and what we're projecting those to be. So you can see there was some heavy lifting done in what we're currently living with. So the current budget showed a budget cut of 2.9 million, almost 3 million. What we're projecting then for next year, when we take the budget cuts that we came up with, the 794, and then adding in those enhancements, we're at a net of 256,800. Taking the enrollment information and doing some, just guesstimates and proposals of what we're going to see for an increase on the Gen Ed formula and those different pieces, what that's looking like, as well as increase in our expenses. We're looking at a 777,000 deficit going into FY 27, and then 28 and 29 would also show deficits. Please keep in mind, we're working with data that we have today. So we, are shining up our crystal ball and hoping that our predictions are spot on. But that is the picture that we're looking at right now.
Okay, so this next slide gives you a general overview on what our list includes. So you'll see on there the positions listed out and the expenses listed out for a total of $794,200. But moving on is a little bit more detail. So the first item on that list includes a funding shift, and we have an instructional coach that Julie has gone through her title budget and found an opportunity to reallocate that position from the general fund into our title funds. It is an allowable expense, and so we're able to shift that and realize a real savings of $85,000 to the general fund by doing that. The next item is within our elementary instructional support. With that, we have a 2.3 FTE from our elementary specialists, so that includes our STEM and M teachers, art, music, and Phi-Ed across the 3 elementary buildings. Additionally, there's a 1.0 elementary interventionist reduction, a 1.0 media paraprofessional reduction, and a 1.0 nurse from our elementary reduction. That gives us a total savings of $360,500 from our elementary area. Our secondary instruction, we also analyzed that, and we were able to find an efficiency of a 1.5 FTE at our high school, which gives us a total savings of $127,500. Next is our administrative support area. With our reorganization, we are able to have a reduction in a 1.0 elementary dean and also a 1.0 elementary clerical support person for a total of $191,200. And I believe this is our last one here. This is an operational expense that we're able to find a savings in, and this is with our McKinley building being in a transition this year. We're able to find savings within our utilities of about $30,000 for the next school year. So now this is where we have our enhancements listed. Again, these were items that we all came up with as a team in the total amount of $537,400. So walking you through there, the first item is a 2.0 elementary teacher addition. And this was something that we all felt strongly about adding after we looked at our enrollment in our sections from Jefferson and Lincoln, after we had the reorganization numbers from the transportation department to see which kids landed where. There were a few pockets of class sizes that were higher than we were comfortable with, and so we felt that we needed to bring this forward to add 2.0 in our elementary buildings. Next, the next few are our special ed positions that Rob was just referring to. So he is asking for 2 special ed teachers at our elementary buildings, a full-time day teacher, and 7 special ed paraprofessionals. You'll see the totals listed on there are adjusted to reflect the special education reimbursement. So that's why the numbers are significantly lower than what you see for a general ed position. The next 2 items on that list are designated for our Faribault Middle School. Our middle school still has a hefty goal of increasing our math scores and working on our math curriculum at that building level. And so these 2 positions are meant to support that goal and support that work to really try and provide some good support for our students. There's a 1.0 academic specialist and then a 1.0 math interventionist. And then the last item on there is a middle school 6th grade transition program. And so this program is proposed to look to be within our 6th grade program. So all of our incoming 6th graders will participate in this special course, if you will, to learn how to be a secondary student, to learn how to go from being an elementary student for several years and transitioning into being a secondary student. So we feel like this will be a good program to help our kids transition and be more successful during their 6 through 12 career with us. So that is, again, a total of $537,400. So our next steps here with you are to get some feedback from you and see what additional data you'd like to see or any additional ideas you would like also for us to look into, and then be able to bring a good package and proposal back to you at the March special board meeting on the 3rd. Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Benti?
Not at this time.
Board members, so I'll open it up for questions or comments. I, for one, am very, sorry if I jumped in. I, for one, am very excited and happy to see about the middle school 6th grade transition program. We go back quite a few years. We actually had that program. I believe it was close to a week, at least 4 days it was, in which they learned the building, how to take notes, how to become, as Nicole said, a secondary student, going from 1 teacher, maybe 2 a day, to 5, 6, maybe 7 different connections. So I'm really happy to see that. It makes a difference. It makes kids more calm, at ease, in the building there. So, and that's happening before school starts, this program?
No, this is going to be a year-long course.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Yeah, every other day. So it'll technically be a semester class, but we felt that the skills needed to be learned throughout the school year.
Nice. Good. Yes, Dr. Robichaud, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Chair. Barbie, can you tell me, where is the declining enrollment? level is a declining enrollment that we're experiencing and will experience?
So the majority of it is happening at our secondary. So as an example, this year to next year, what we're proposing for, what we're projecting for students, the elementary is different by one student. So it's the secondary where we're,
Are you the 9 through 12?
actually the 7 through 12,
Okay, so we'll see a decline in enrollment at the middle school as well as the.
as well as the high school.
And that's we've been talking about those smaller class sizes that have been working their way through our district for, well, it's going to be 6 years now, and now's the time that they're hitting our secondary level.
By the way, that was called Project Right Start.
That's good. I was trying to think of it. I'm glad you remembered that. Yes, thank you.
That's right. Way here.
Me too. I'm there.
I just have one other question.
Go ahead,
Sure,
Dr.
if I may.
Wishow.
There's been some discussion about a Somalian cultural program. Is that part of the enhancement as well? If it is, I don't see it on here.
So that is one of the pieces that we're still looking at. So one of the pieces that we may be bringing in April, we're still working out some of the funding mechanisms around it, is a culture and language option in social studies at our elementary level, in Spanish and Somali, where students would have the choice, do I take my social studies in English, in Spanish, or Somali culture and language areas?
Okay, so it's not an immersion program like our.
It's not an immersion program, no. We already have our Spanish immersion program, yes.
Any further comments? Dr. Moore?
Yes. I like the idea of adding elementary teachers. I think that's a good idea on the special ed. I guess I just have a question. The academic specialist for middle school, does this person work directly with the students or with the teachers, or just, I guess, what are the duties of the academic specialist?
I'll let Dr. Fox describe that for you.
So,
Yeah, so, this is heavily based on the reading program I did, the reading intervention program I did for the ninth grade academy, and we saw some really great success. In fact, the greatest success story I had was a student who could complete the first grade QRI, and by the end of the year, he was able to read at the fourth grade level. Because we had really intensive intervention, because we had an academic specialist. So the interventionist will do a lot of the data. The interventionist will work with students and will work with teachers to do whole group, whereas the academic specialist will work with the small groups and do tier 2 and tier 3 pull-outs with students.
so they do work with the students then?
Yes.
Okay, directly. Okay, thank you. I guess one of the things I'd really like to see as an enhancement is to put some paraprofessionals in with the early, kindergarten and through third grade. I think we need to really, many years ago, I was a stay-at-home mom for a few years, and so I got to be a room mother every year, and that's when they pulled the aids. And I could see firsthand just by, that one teacher, she had probably 3 reading groups, and she'd working on one reading group, and, and the other students had questions. So I think it's really important to consider, because you need some feedback here, that I think we need to start putting paraprofessionals back into our kindergarten especially, because I think we've only got a half of, 0.5 para now? There's 3, well, let's see, in the elementary schools, there's 3 kindergartens, and they only have, 2 paras? So I think we need to really look at that, because I think it's an important piece. The paras in kindergarten, some of these little kids can't go to the bathroom themselves, and so I think we have to look at that too. So I'd like to add that in there.
So I think next year we're projecting to have 6.5 paras for 10 kindergarten classes. So when we
So
looked
it's still, you've got 10 kindergarten classes, but you only got 6.
Yes, it is not a 1-to-1 ratio, but it is not the full-fledged remove all the kindergarten paras that we proposed a couple years ago. We're not looking to remove any more of those. One of the things that I challenged this group with was when I said enhancements, I said very clearly, I do not want you to bring me what we have always done. I don't want to just have you say, well, this was cut 2 years ago, so let's bring this back, unless you can say, here's the data that shows why we have to bring this back. So I really challenge this group to say enhancements, if it is something that we cut last year or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, there better be some strong data points that show why we need to bring that back. But enhancements are truly what is out there, what is on the edge of research, what is showing that it will work in Faribault, Minnesota for our students, not 7 miles up the road, not 10 miles down the road. What will work for our students in Faribault, Minnesota? So that's what I really challenge this group with.
Dr. Robichaud.
Chair, and I don't know who can answer this, but is there any possibility that some of those special ed positions can be shifted to federal funding? Because they're new positions. So I don't know what the balance is of any federal funds, ideal money, but if some of that could be shifted. I know you're looking at reimbursement. We don't know what that's going to be, but if any of those new positions can be shifted to special funding, federal
And
funding.
I think, and we don't have Rob on
No.
anymore, but I think that was calculated into those costs.
Shifting the whole thing into federal funds.
Oh,
Not
well,
the state reimbursement, talking about moving them over to the federal funds.
at this point, my understanding is that the federal government doesn't pay for all of that. They only pay for a percentage, and then the state pays a percentage on top of that.
Unless it's changed in the last several years, federal funding is 100% supported that position. There's no, you can't commingle the dollars.
Okay.
So sorry. So at this time, we are using all of our federal dollars that are allocated to us, so we're using those fully.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Anything further?
I have
Ms.
a
Knudsen.
question about the middle school academic specialist. So it's 28,000, is that partially funded federally or with grants or something?
Yes, that position is showing the net result of what it would cost us out of the general fund.
Okay.
Questions? That was, I want to thank you for coming and staying in a bitter cold night and being one of the last ones on the agenda. I had partially something to do with that, sorry. So I'll take the blame, but thank you, and thank you for your input. And this is a difficult time, what to reduce, what to add back, or what enhancements we believe going forward, but it's a difficult time, and I know you'll work with the staff, et cetera, to make sure they understand why we're doing this and what's best for our kids right now, best for their education like that. So if we have nothing further, I'd like to thank you. Thanks for coming and presenting, and we'll move on to number 10J, reorganization update.
So, Mr. Chair, just as they're leaving, I just want to thank them because the work that they have done putting this budget piece together, and I've challenged them to think outside of just their four walls of their building or program that they are overseeing. And they've really stepped up and done that and looked out for the welfare of the district. And they've made tough decisions, and they've sacrificed pieces that were in their building because they knew it was what was best for the district as a whole. So, and once again, I'll reiterate, we have made very sound and solid financial decisions our last few years, which has put us in the position this year to be able to continue to have enhancements as we adjust our budget. So that is one of the things that we are incredibly proud of as well. So, yes.
Mr. Chair, can I?
Certainly.
I know one place where you're saving money is heat in this building.
That's okay. Saves money.
Maybe it's because I'm older.
Oh, you're too
I'll
warm?
bring a blanket if I need.
Oh, you're cold?
Maybe we need to look into the school board budget, see if we get parkas up here for school board members, or,
Sorry.
sorry, we'll have to ask yourself.
Okay, just real quick for the reorganization update. So we did meet with the teachers and their choices Those that were displaced due to the reorganization, they all chose what their next position and building was going to be. The nice thing about that is no one was permanently displaced. We actually had, was it 4 open slots after we were done choosing? So we're still looking to fill 4 spots. So we didn't have any teachers that were permanently displaced or let go due to the reorganization. They had a choice in where they were going, and which building they were going to be in based off of seniority. We followed contractual language and an agreement that we had with the Faribault Education Association. So that happened a couple weeks ago. We are now moving forward with a bus route. We are really close. We worked with them again yesterday. We have a preliminary one. I shouldn't say that. We have a pretty solid one drawn out on paper. The bus garage is now, Faribault Transportation, I guess I should say, is now going through and just looking at all the little minute details to make sure we didn't miss anything, and double checking with our system, Infinite Campus. And we plan to have that finalized, I would say, within the next week to 10 days, notifying parents sometime in March around which boundary they will fall in for the upcoming school year. And I know Nicole is working on paras assignments that will be coming up in the next couple weeks. Principals are working on space in their building, room assignments. We gave them, I believe, a May 1st deadline that they needed to have all teachers assigned or choose a room by. And then Kane is working diligently on what the pieces around McKinley are going to look like, because that building will need more construction pieces, mostly in the HVAC, but we're looking at some other pieces too, so that it can house larger secondary students. See, asking you shall receive. I think they had just turned on. Kane must be listening at home. And then also looking at what the move is going to look like. And I know he just posted for some summer help yesterday, and he's already been collecting boxes. So we're working on a lot of the pieces in the background that a lot of people don't see, but a lot of decisions are being made about how the nuts and bolts are going to happen as we move forward. And I don't believe Nicole or Barbie or Cabinet, I don't believe I left anything out there. So, all right, and that's my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item number 11, dates to remember, February 27th, 3 o'clock p.m., board retreat. It's 3 to 5 p.m. I will be sending out an email reminding you of your homework assignment, board members, et cetera, from our last meeting. March 3rd, 2025, 5:30 is our work session, and there will be a special meeting after, or either before or afterwards, for approval of the budget.
If we could do it before, then we can post it that it will happen at 5:30. We can put a time to it, and then we can do the work session after.
Excellent. That's what we shall do. Thank you. March 4th at 3:45 p.m., Policy Committee meeting. March 10th, 7:30 a.m., Finance Committee meeting. And March 17th at 5:30 p.m. is our business meeting. Agenda item number 12, adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn? I'll make the motion to adjourn. Anybody want to second that?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ms. Knutson. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.